The movie begins on the streets of Bellwood City, where police vehicles chase a runaway robotic tank. With laser beams and missiles to destroy buildings, the robotic tank evades the authorities. Aboard the Rust Bucket, Ben, Gwen, and their grandfather, Maxwell Tennyson, pursue the escaping tank. The Rust Bucket collides with the tank and causes it to crash into the building. However, the tank deploys its spider-like legs and aims its cannon at the Rust Bucket. As the tank attacks, the Tennysons flee, but one of the tires of the Rust Bucket pops, which gives the tank the chance to corner them under a skyway. To fight off the robotic tank, Ben attempts to use the Omnitrix, but Max stops him from transforming into his alien form. Max steps out of the vehicle with a gun and starts shooting at the tank. Ben dismisses Max's orders and transforms into one of his alien forms, Upgrade anyways. Ben tries to attack the robotic tank, but Gwen stops him using her magic as she believes her magic is stronger than Ben's upgrade powers. Ben disagrees at first, but Gwen restrains him between magic panels. He pretends to agree, but immediately attacks and merges with the robotic tank when Gwen frees him. Due to Upgrade's technology, he accidentally enhances the robotic tank's weaponry and tries to prevent it to go berserk. Ben maintains control of the tank while Gwen casts a dismantling spell that electrocutes Ben. The tank starts to fall apart, which almost hurt Max and Gwen. Ben gathers his nanites from the debris and reforms into Upgrade, but suffers the effects of the dismantling spell before reverting back to Ben. Gwen immediately rescues Max from the debris of the tank. Ben and Gwen argue about whom to blame like they always do, and Max tells them to let it be. They start to walk away unaware that the Omnitrix is surging with Gwen's pink energy from the dismantling spell. Later, Ben rides his hoverboard along the streets of an abandoned ominous Bellwood. When he reaches a corner, he sees a black figure whom he originally thinks to be Max, his grandfather. But the black figure ignites and turns out to be one of his aliens, Heat Blast, who later attacks him. Ben escapes with his hoverboard, but later comes across Four Arms, Stinkfly, Diamond Head, and Wildmutt. He challenges all the other aliens and his hoverboard suddenly goes rogue. The Upgrade comes out of the board and attacks him. Ben manages to evade them, but he later stumbles on the ground and gets picked up by Way Big, demanding his homework. He wakes up to the sight of his teacher asking for his homework. Ben gets startled by his teacher and immediately hands over a paper, but the moment the teacher touches the paper, the Omnitrix suddenly flashes a pink-colored light, and the paper vanishes. After the class, Ben gets assigned a history report and receives detention when his teacher sees a drawing of himself in Ben's notebook. In the locker area, Cash and JT power trip Ben and lock him up inside a locker. Ben tries to transform into Four Arms, but he transforms into Heat Blast instead. When he gets out of the locker, Heat Blast's hot plasma triggers the school's fire alarm. He immediately flees and flies home as Heat Blast. He later hears his parents, Carl and Sandra, calling him. He panics for a bit, but thankfully reverts into Ben before his parents enter the room. When he cannot explain the burnt marks on their carpet from Heat Blast's feet, Ben receives a suspension as punishment and cannot go fishing with his grandfather for the coming weekend. In the evening, Ben calls his grandfather to persuade his parents on his behalf to let him leave for their fishing trip, but Max refuses and says that he doesn't want Ben to be distant from his family like he almost did in the past. After reluctantly accepting his fate for the weekend, Ben tries to do his history report but immediately gives up. The Omnitrix then flashes and his laptop disappears, which leads him to believe that the Omnitrix vaporized it. He then calls Gwen to deceive her into doing his history report, but Gwen refuses to help and hangs up on him. Ben sulks after getting no help from Gwen when suddenly a crystal flies through his bedroom window. When he looks outside, he sees Tetrax, a Petrosapian bounty hunter who came from his home planet Petropia, where silicon-based lifeforms like Tetrax live. Tetrax informs Ben that Azimuth has a message and needs to meet him. Azimuth is a renowned inventor throughout the universe and is the creator of Ben's Omnitrix. The two head out to a forest area where Tetrax's ship is parked. When Tetrax reveals his ship, he gets confused as to why Azimuth is not there when they both agreed to meet at that coordinates. Tetrax sees Ben's Omnitrix flashing and suspects that there is something wrong with it, but Ben refuses to let Tetrax inspect it further. Ben takes off to find Azimuth, but on his way, the Omnitrix suddenly emits a bright flash that causes an accident involving a truck. Ben attempts to approach the truck, but a huge branch falls and traps him. The trees start to break and a Talkastar emerges. It tries to step on him, but Tetrax arrives and frees him. When Ben tries to transform into Way Big, the Omnitrix transforms him into Stinkfly instead. Tetrax tells Stinkfly that the weakness of the giant alien lies in its fin on top of its head. He then instructs Stinkfly to go to the fin while he distracts the Talkastar. When Stinkfly reaches the fin, he suddenly transforms into Ben, who manages to grab the fin before falling to the ground. The Omnitrix flashes and the Talkastar vanishes. Ben still believes that the Omnitrix vaporized the alien just like the laptop. He falls to the ground as the Talkastar disappears and Tetrax manages to catch him. Tetrax believes that the Talkastar and Azimuth are somewhat connected and Ben suggests they search for Azimuth. When they return to Tetrax's ship to find Azimuth, Tetrax modifies something on Ben's Omnitrix without telling Ben what it is. The ship takes off, and just when they are about to head out to space, the ship receives numerous attacks which end up puncturing a hole in the ship's hull. Ben tries to hold onto a chair, but the hole sucks him out of the ship. He calls for Tetrax as he rapidly falls to the ground. In Bellwood, as Gwen and Max prepare for their fishing trip, Max receives a call from Carl telling him that Ben is gone and has escaped. Max assures Carl that they will look for Ben. Gwen tries to find Ben using the locator spell, to no avail, and she can only track his energy as far as the forest. They head out to the truck's crash site where Gwen senses Ben's energy and discovers that a fight between aliens has taken place based on Tetrax crystal tracks on the trees. They later see the truck, and using her spell, Gwen discovers that it is an alien ship disguised as a truck. Just then, Tetrax arrives in his punctured ship and demands to talk with them. Meanwhile, Ben transforms into Diamond Head just before he hits the ground, but he has no idea where he landed. As he walks along the road, he tries to revert back to Ben but transforms into 4 arms instead. He continues to walk and finds himself in front of Stonehenge, where he is attacked by a galvanic mechamorph named Retaliator who demands the presence of another alien. A fight ensues. 4 Arms attacks Retaliator, but the latter takes a slight advantage as he can teleport. When 4 Arms throw him off Stonehenge, Retaliator melts and transforms into a more advanced mechanical fighter. Retaliator continues to ask for an alien whom 4 Arms doesn't know. He tries to trick Retaliator so he can have a chance to attack, knocking Retaliator away. But Retaliator teleports back and shoots missiles onto 4 Arms. 4 Arms catches the missiles and maneuvers its direction, causing a collision with Retaliator. The fight continues as Retaliator mentions shooting down Tetrax's ship. He asks what 4 Arms know about Azimuth when the latter mentions the name. The fight ends up wrecking the Stonehenge. 4 Arms transforms into Upgrade, which leaves Retaliator confused about where 4 Arms went. Retaliator decides to interrogate Upgrade instead and bring him to his planet, but they instead teleport to Rio. His teleporter messes up because of Upgrade, and so he cannot teleport directly to his home planet. He teleports again, and this time they land on the pyramids of Egypt, which are made by Tetramans. Upgrade then transforms into Stinkfly and escapes. With his slime, he traps Retaliator on the pyramid and explains the Omnitrix. However, Retaliator refuses to believe him and still attacks when he breaks free from the slime. He knocks down Stinkfly in the air, and they teleport to Bellwood before crashing down on the pyramid. The Retaliator chases Stinkfly around Bellwood while continuously shooting at him. He knocks Stinkfly into the building with his water attack, but Stinkfly transforms into Heat Blast and emerges from the broken building. Heat Blast tries to attack Retaliator, but he gets frozen within a giant ice cap. Retaliator interrogates Heat Blast about Talkastar while dangling him off a building, and Heat Blast mentions that it disappeared, which Retaliator refuses to believe. Heat Blast luckily transforms into gray matter and escapes. Back in the forest, Tetrax informs Max and Gwen about what happened and mentions that he altered the Omnitrix to keep Ben from transforming back to normal for his protection. Max cannot hide his frustration, and Gwen suggests they find Azimuth as he might help them locate Ben. She also says that the truck is Azimuth's ship, which makes Tetrax believe that Azimuth indeed made it to Earth. The 3 enter the ship, where they discover that Azimuth has been tracking a malfunction on the Omnitrix. Gwen finds a video of Azimuth disguising his ship into a truck before a sudden flash of light knocks his ship off course. The Talkastar appears. The clip ends as it walks away. Tetrax mentions that it was the same Talkastar he and Ben fought earlier. Their conversation gets interrupted when Retaliator appears and aims a gun at them. Retaliator says that Azimuth is dead and shows them a video clip where the Talkastar crushes the ship. Tetrax then pins him to the wall, and they ask for Ben's whereabouts. Max shows him an image of the Omnitrix for him to recognize it. Before they can interrogate Retaliator further, the self-destruct feature of Azimuth's ship activates. Retaliator teleports away and escapes the exploding ship. Gwen uses her magic to shield the others. She senses Ben's energy when Max says they need to look for Ben and says that Ben is just nearby. Meanwhile, Gray Matter arrives at his home and tries to enter, but Sandra opens the door. Sandra and Carl panic when they see him. She attacks him and throws him outside. Gray Matter transforms into Diamond Head upon landing on the ground. She faints while Carl gets stunned with a weapon. Max, Gwen, and Tetrax arrive. When Tetrax returns the Omnitrix to normal, Retaliator appears and grabs Diamond Head with a rope. Diamond Head later transforms into Ben to Retaliator's surprise. The Omnitrix begins to behave oddly again. Gwen realizes what is happening and hurries to Ben. After the Omnitrix flashes, everyone disappears except Max and Ben's parents. When Max goes in to check, he sees that the Omnitrix also remains, without Ben. A moment later, Gwen and Tetrax find themselves in what looks like an abandoned city like in Ben's dreams. Gwen tries to call for anybody, but there is no one except for them. Suddenly, a screen flashes in front of them and a female voice informs them they are still on Earth. As for Ben and Retaliator, they end up in a crystal world where they are attacked by a swarm of lepidopterans. Retaliator transforms again into a mechanical warrior and flees while dragging Ben, who is attached to him with a rope. He tries to fend off the swarm by shooting at them. Turns out, the swarm is not after them and is only passing by. Meanwhile, with her locator spell, Gwen determines that they are inside the Omnitrix. They hear a thunder-like sound and suddenly, a horde of Vulpamincers start approaching them at high speed. Tetrax flees with Gwen on a crystal hoverboard. When they get trapped, Gwen casts her spell which sends them to one of the building's windows. The Vulpamincers follow and chase them up to the rooftop. They jump off the roof and Gwen casts her spell again to open a portal. The two escape through the portal and the Vulpamincers fall to the ground and then immediately disappear, while Retaliator forces Ben to admit transforming into the evil Takastar. Gwen and Tetrax fall from the portal. Gwen tells them that the world they are in is just a computer simulation made by the Omnitrix when it downloaded them. Retaliator tries to escape with Ben, but Gwen prevents him using her energy bubble spell. Inside, Retaliator's power does not work, and so he is forced to admit everything that happened. Turns out, Retaliator is Azimuth's father who hasn't seen his son in 1,000 years, and so he tries to contact Azimuth on his way to Earth, but only receives footage of Azimuth being crushed by the Takastar. To take revenge, Retaliator teleports to Bellwood and shoots down Tetrax's ship, believing it was the Takastars. Just when they realize that the Omnitrix must have scanned the evil Takastar, the ground suddenly cracks and Ben sees his homework and laptop inside the ice. The evil Takastar then emerges from the ground. Retaliator tries to attack it, but Gwen stops him, so he ties up Ben and Gwen together. The two fall off a cliff where Gwen realizes that her dismantling spell during the fight with the robotic tank messed up the Omnitrix. She believes that upgrade in her spell can bring them back to Bellwood. Using Gwen's magic, they fly to the surface, and Gwen casts a spell on Retaliator's upgrade which causes him to crackle. Inside the rust bucket, Max tries to fix the Omnitrix when it begins to flash. He gets out just in time before the Takastar appears and destroys it. The rest of the crew return to Bellwood. The Takastar then leaves without attacking them, and Retaliator follows to get his revenge. Ben tries to transform, but the Omnitrix transforms his parents into Wildmutt and Heat Blast, who then attack them. Tetrax implies that Ben's parents are disoriented from being transformed into aliens, and that's when Gwen realizes that Azimuth must be the Takastar, transformed in a way the Omnitrix did with Ben's parents. Textrix instructs Ben and Gwen to stop Azimuth and Retaliator from destroying the city while he and Max deal with Ben's parents. Ben transforms into Way Big and puts Gwen on his shoulder before making their way to Azimuth and Retaliator. When Gwen and Way Big reach the location, Way Big immediately grabs Azimuth and tries to stop him from fighting Retaliator. Way Big proves to be stronger than Azimuth, who is laying down weakly on the debris of destroyed buildings. Retaliator sees Way Big, who he believes to be another enemy. He attacks Way Big and sends him flying with his laser blasts and missiles. Gwen tries to convince Retaliator that Way Big is Ben, but Retaliator refuses to listen. Just when Azimuth recovers and attempts to attack, Way Big grabs Retaliator to protect him from getting crushed by the attacking Azimuth. Way Big pushes Azimuth toward the building, and Retaliator manages to break free from Way Big's hands. Gwen convinces Retaliator to believe that Azimuth is the Takastar and uses her spell to connect with Azimuth's mind. Azimuth remembers the Omnitrix and his father. He grabs Ben and Gwen, and Retaliator then uses Retaliator's upgrade to fix the Omnitrix. A few seconds later, the Omnitrix flashes, and the Takastar disappears. Suddenly, they hear Azimuth's voice, who's now back to his original self. Ben rushes to give a warm embrace to Azimuth, who later explains that he has come to Earth to fix the Omnitrix as he can detect it overloaded with mana from across the universe. Retaliator then apologizes as he was overpowered with a vengeance, because he did not recognize his own son. Azimuth also offers his apology for letting his invention get in the way of his family, and says that the mechamorph armor causes his father's aggression. Retaliator's armor melts down into a cube and reveals himself to be a small Galvan. Before Azimuth leaves, Ben asks a favor to return his parents back to normal. Azimuth helps Ben revert the Omnitrix's effect to his parents, who cannot remember what had happened, and even allow Ben to go with Max for their fishing trip. As Azimuth and Retaliator prepare to leave, Ben and Gwen argue about who was the one to blame for the rust bucket, and so Azimuth fixes the vehicle. Ben refuses to go on the fishing trip and admits he's wrong for running away from his parents. Later, as Tetrax leaves Earth, Ben delivers his history report on the Age of Exploration, explaining the importance of family over adventures. On the next summer vacation, Dr. Animo with his giant mutant frog attacks the Tennysons while on their road trip. The movie ends as Ben, Gwen, and Max prepare for another fight against evil.